Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 368 for the 8th of November 2015. Richard Saunders here with you from Melbourne, Australia. Beautiful, sunny, rainy, cold, hot, wintry, summery, and all the rest of it in Melbourne. I'm down here for a few days at the invitation of my good friend Dr. Steve Roberts, who's a long-time member of the Skeptics and the Australian Skeptics, one of them, UFO expert. I brought with me 60 kilos worth of UFO books for Steve Roberts. And at the end of the show, right at the end of the show, we're going to be looking at some of these books and discussing UFOs. Should be interesting. But before we do that, we're going to kick off this week's show, the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers vaccination supporters. Heidi and some other people we know were asked to appear in front of a Senate committee last week looking at no jab, no pay legislation here in Australia. Heidi's going to report on her presentation, and you'll hear her presentation to the Senate committee. Also, we're going to be hearing a little bit of the cacophony, hoo-ha, general misbehaving of the anti-vaccination crowd at the hearing. And it really drives home that a lot of these people are so wound up in conspiracy theory and general distrust of the medical fraternity and the government. It really comes across. I'll play a little snippet of their antics. They're carrying on, most undignified, most unprofessional, but it's their true colours. And as opposed to their carry-on, Heidi and people from Friends in Science and Medicine and Stop the AVN also gave presentations, were calm, were collected, they had facts, they were professional. What a difference. Anyway, you'll get a taste of all that coming up with a Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson at the top of the show. Following that, it's a Week in Science from our friends at the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au, a fine scientific institution, and they do good outreach too. Then it's Maynard's Spooky Action. Maynard with some vox pops at the recent Australian Skeptics National Convention in Brisbane. Thank you to those wonderful people in Brisbane who put that all together. Some interviews here and there. And the feature interview this week is with Dr Eugenie Scott from California, who flew out for the convention. Now, Eugenie Scott has retired, but she certainly has a lot to say about the current state of the creationism and evolution situation in the United States, which is an ongoing concern. All that coming up on this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone. But now it's time for me to open up the door, walk down the hall, look in the fridge and see if there isn't some leftover cheesecake from a party that Dr. Steve had the other night, together with his wife Barbara. They were celebrating the fact that Steve has built a new shed in his backyard. Any excuse, eh? Well, I'm sure there's a bit of cheesecake left over. If I'm lucky, well, I'm doing that. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
It's the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson.
Hi everyone, it's Heidi Robertson coming to you from the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. Last Monday, the 2nd of November, was a big day for the Northern Rivers vaccination supporters. We were asked by a Senate committee to come and give a statement regarding our views on the proposed no jab, no pay legislation that they are currently looking at passing here in Australia. If you are unaware of this bill, It is looking at removing conscientious and religious exemptions to vaccination, leaving only medical exemptions. Religious exemptions are being removed as there are no mainstream religions in Australia that oppose vaccination. Currently, in order to receive certain government subsidies for sending children to childcare, a parent has to have a form signed by a doctor indicating philosophical, religious or medical exemptions. If those options are now removed, apart from the medical one, those families will miss out on certain payments. The Northern Rivers vaccination supporters, along with hundreds of others, put in a submission to the Senate about this bill, and we were very surprised when we received an invitation to Brisbane for the hearing and an opportunity to speak further about it in front of the Senate Community Affairs Legislation Committee. Also invited to speak was the Stop the AVN group, and their representatives rang in via telephone. Their excellent testimony was given by Dr John Cunningham, epidemiologist, Dr Dave Hawkes, virologist, and Dr Patrick Stokes, senior lecturer in philosophy. Other organisations represented on the day included the Australian Medical Association, the Royal Australasian College of Physicians, Childcare Alliance Australia, the Parenthood, Inspired Family Daycare Service, the Public Health Association of Australia, Associate Professor Julie Leask, the Department of Social Services and the Department of Health. Members of the public were also invited to speak. In total for the day, there were 20 of them at 2 minutes each. For us, it was slightly off-putting having the Australian Vaccination Skeptic Network's former presidents, Merrill Dorey and Greg Beattie, in attendance, who had also been invited to speak, despite the HCCC warning out against that particular organisation. Brett Smith, naturopath, and Debbie Kemp, childcare operator, and both staunch anti-vaccination advocates, also spoke just before us. Senator Richard Di Natale was on the committee and rang in to ask a few questions, and the hearing descended into a cacophony of anti-vaccination sentiment from members of the gallery and those on the panel. It was frankly embarrassing to witness, and almost certainly did not do anything positive for the anti-vaccination cause, particularly when Brett Smith basically accused senators of being Rupert Murdoch's shills. Here's an example of how they carried on.
So I'm hoping that we can actually concentrate on the issues here and not worry about what Rupert Murdoch and News Limited want you to say today at this hearing.
Mrs. Smith, Senator Natale.
Given
Natale,
that
and we can go to questions.
Yeah, given that today's hearing isn't actually about the effectiveness of vaccines, I'm more interested in the credibility of the witnesses here today. Now, in terms of the evidence provided by the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network, there was a ruling made by the Health Complaints Commission in New South Wales that the information they provide on vaccination is, and I quote, misleading to the average reader because it's either incorrect, inaccurately represented, or because it's been taken out of context. And that was a ruling by the Health Complaints Commission in New South Wales. What has the organisation done to correct the way in which they present that information? How is that different today compared with the manner in which they've presented information on this issue in the past?
About the AVN, there's a lot of groups here that aren't represented by the AVN, and you're wasting a lot of our time. I know Mr. Murdoch wants you to ask these questions, Mr. Di Natale.
A group of witnesses, and I think we need to respect the...
It's going to be virtually impossible if people speak over one another. Now, I can't order Senator Di Natale what questions to ask. He's entitled to ask his questions, and you can choose to answer them in whatever way you like. We are almost out of time, and it is unhelpful. So there was a question. I missed most of it, but I'm not going to instruct senators how to ask their questions. They're all entitled to ask their questions. We are virtually out of time. If someone would like to address the question that Senator Natali has.
We don't want to address
more
that
questions.
Question.
Okay. Well, it sounds like that's. It sounds like there will. Sorry, Mrs. Kemp. Would you like to answer?
We use up all the time. Well, we've used it all the time. So I'd like to say some more things.
Order.
And now, here is a recording of our statement. The transcript can be found on our website at www.nrvs.info.
Yes, Mrs. Robertson.
Thank you for inviting us here today. We're here representing the Northern Rivers vaccination supporters. We're an unfunded community advocacy group formed in 2013 as a result of concerns that we live in the region with Australia's lowest vaccination rates. Just under half of children aged 5 are fully vaccinated in Mullumbimby. So the national average of over 90% vaccination coverage is pretty much irrelevant in pockets like ours. We are in support of the proposed legislation for a number of reasons, but we also have a couple of concerns about it that we'd like to share. Vaccinations don't only protect individuals, they also protect communities. And we see vaccinating as a social responsibility. It protects children and other members of society who are vulnerable to infectious disease, such as babies too young to be vaccinated, the elderly, people with legitimate medical exemptions who cannot be vaccinated, and immune-suppressed people such as cancer patients. Childcare facilities are where children are in close proximity with each other for extended periods of time, putting them at greater risk of contagious disease. This is even more concerning if a number of children there are not vaccinated, as the diseases potentially being shared can be very dangerous. We see it as particularly fitting, then, that the proposed legislation focuses on withholding a government subsidy that helps parents of unvaccinated children send their kids to attend childcare facilities. We have heard one of the main concerns is that parents' choices are being taken away from them if this legislation is passed. Our view is that parents do in fact still have a choice, but that choice not to vaccinate will now come with a consequence. It is the parents choosing not to vaccinate their children, not the legislation, that will be disadvantaging their children and endangering the community. Is the legislation coercive? Yes, but not unjustly so. In our region, our group has had an impact on some members of the community, but vaccination rates remain dangerously low, and we need a stronger incentive for people to vaccinate. We believe that both a carrot and a stick approach are needed. We think that there needs to be more targeted educational campaigns and awareness raised, and any access issues addressed, but we also need consequences for those who make choices that put others at risk. This is a public health issue. There are consequences for speeding and for drink driving. Surely there should also be consequences if your actions leave the vulnerable at risk of preventable infectious disease. The impact of pockets of low vaccination rates on the incidence of disease must be considered, as babies and other vulnerable people are going to continue to get sick and die if something is not done. As you may be aware, Malachi Cockcroft, Kayla Smith, Dana McCaffrey and Riley Hughes all passed away from whooping cough, all too young to be vaccinated, and all from areas with dangerously low vaccination rates. There was no community immunity to shield them. As another example, one of the members of our group has a little girl who contracted whooping cough at a daycare centre after an unvaccinated child attended with whooping cough. This little girl now suffers from a condition called bronchiectasis, which leaves her with lifelong lung damage. She is another example of how this legislation can, in the future, prevent this from happening to other children. We'd also like to point out that anecdotally this proposed legislation is already having a positive effect in our region. We have had vaccine-hesitant parents approach our group seeking more information about vaccination as a direct result of it, and they have told us that they are now reconsidering their stance. Local immunisation providers have also reported similar stories. One concern we do have, specific for our region, is that many people have an alternative healthcare provider rather than a GP as their primary healthcare practitioner. This is problematic for a number of reasons. It means that our notification rates of vaccine-preventable diseases may in fact be significantly underreported. People are not being diagnosed or referred on by alternative healthcare practitioners, and so notifications to public health may not be happening. In addition, many receive unproven remedies and ineffective alternative vaccination options such as homeopathy, foregoing proven preventative medicine, effective evidence-based treatments, and potentially remaining infectious for longer. As a result of all of this, we have parents in our group who are too frightened to take their babies out in public. We have mothers not joining mothers groups, missing out on those valuable social interactions and support groups. Just yesterday, a local dad contacted us who is putting the family home on the market to move from the area because they can no longer cope with the prevailing sentiment regarding vaccination and the various conspiracy theories surrounding the issue. We have parents contact us who have been told by other mums that vaccines cause autism or shaken baby syndrome. Doctors, midwives and alternative healthcare practitioners in our region are giving conflicting advice, leaving parents to wonder what the best thing is to do for their baby. Vaccination, as you may have seen online, has been equated to rape or said to be a government agenda to pander to pharmaceutical companies or as a form of population control. The fear-mongering is relentless here. We are fighting an uphill battle for our community, and thus far there's been little research done into our region as to what approaches may help people gain confidence in the vaccination schedule or in how to stop the relentless tide of misinformation. To help counter these issues, in addition to this legislation, we would propose an annual reminder system linked to the Australian Childhood Immunisation Register in order to keep the lines of communication open with vaccine-hesitant parents. We'd also like to see the money saved from the legislation go towards targeted education campaigns and research, particularly into unique demographics like ours. One last concern is the probability of vaccine refusers forming unregistered casual childcare alliances, exposing the children and the wider community to outbreaks of preventable disease. We would welcome any measures to have regulatory processes in place for such instances. In conclusion, we do support this legislation as we believe that it will protect those who have no choice, especially those kids in childcare who are vaccinated but continually exposed to disease that should be relegated to the history books by now. The young, the elderly and those too sick to be vaccinated themselves. Those are the people that deserve our protection. Thank you. The committee will be reporting on this on Monday the 9th of November, we have been advised. So we'll keep you posted. That's all from me for this week. Till next time, this is Heidi Robertson signing off. Bye.
Welcome to a week in science from RiAus, bringing you the science you need to know. With features like parking assist, automated braking and adaptive cruise control, we're already well on our way to having driverless cars. In fact, manufacturers say that they'll be in stores by 2020. So, how do they work? Prototypes from Nissan, Volvo, Audi and Google use a variety of sensors mounted on the car to build a detailed picture of its surroundings. One of the main sensors is a type of laser called LiDAR. It sends out rapid pulses of non-visible light and measures the time they take to bounce off objects and return. Because light moves at a constant speed, we can then calculate the car's distance from that object and build a 3D image of its environment. The data from LiDAR is combined with video and radar sensor information and is processed by an onboard computer that makes decisions about steering, braking and acceleration. This sophisticated programming requires the computer to self-learn so that it can still choose the correct action when it encounters unexpected scenarios. I can see the appeal of a driverless car, allowing you to better use your commuting time and providing independence to people who couldn't otherwise drive. Plus, they could save thousands of lives by removing human driver error, which accounts for over 90% of crashes. They could also benefit the environment by reducing the number of cars on the road. One vehicle could serve the whole family by driving itself between pickups and drop-offs. Or, in a reimagined taxi service, rather than owning a car at all, you could lodge a transport request and whatever car is closest will pick you up. Smart braking and acceleration could potentially increase fuel efficiency by 25%, and communication between cars will mean that road space is used better and commuting times become shorter. But there are some concerns, so let's take a look at the top 4. First are concerns about licensing and legal issues. If your driverless car is in a crash, who is liable? Viruses and malfunctions in the software are another worry. If we can't have bug-free internet browsers, is it even possible to make a bug-free car? A third potential impact is that the technology will encourage urban sprawl, with people tolerating long commutes when they're not actually driving. And finally, the idea of someone being able to remotely hack your car raises some scary safety and even terrorism concerns. That's it for this week in science. For more information on driverless cars, go to the RiAus website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter at RiAus and like us on Facebook. I'm Kieran Groom, and we'll catch you next week.
Want to help support the Skeptic Zone and look pretty damn stylish while you're about it? Visit Mr. Cat's Origami Jewellery. Go to www.skepticzone.tv and click the link, or simply Google Mr. Cat's Origami Jewellery, also on Facebook. Pendants, earrings and cufflinks. Support Mr. Cat. Support the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Oh, look, we're on day 1 here, and our visiting American that you've already heard on the show, we've got...
Oh, Angie Mackey.
Right now, you've seen the Brisbane Skeptics in action on stage. How do you think of it? How's this compared to the other ones you've been to around the world? Because you are just travelling everywhere. If there's a skeptical thing on, you'll be there.
I love it. I just love it. The people are so wonderful, and I love talking to people who have questioning mindset.
And it's a great venue too. All this beautiful glass and the sunshine's coming in, but we've got enough air conditioning to keep it cool.
Oh yeah, the gardens are beautiful.
And actually, Joe Nickel cruising, he's cruising past there.
Oh.
I reckon he'd be a tough guy if he goes to buy like a washing machine or a fridge. He'd be the hardest guy to sell something to.
Probably, very likely. He'd probably end up selling that person a wooden nickel.
Yes, something like that kind of guy. And what do you reckon kind of people have come to this one? Because you've been to a couple of different skeptics conventions in Australia. Is there a different Queenslander feel to this?
Well, I haven't been able to see as much of the city as I did when I was in Sydney, but it...
Look, it's mainly because you've been going out at night. You've been roaming the streets at night.
I wouldn't consider it roaming, but whatever. So, anyway, the people are just... They're always wonderful, and it's a little bit of a different feel to it. It's a little less glitzy than it did down in Sydney, but I just love that people are so genuine.
I'm here with one of the speakers I've just met. What's your name, sir?
Jim Coyne from Philadelphia.
Oh, Philadelphia, the city of... that's brotherly love goes on there, doesn't it?
That's right.
So have they got same-sex marriage yet or not?
Oh, yeah. They've got a lively gay community also.
Great. Was there a lively debate when it happened or not?
No, I think it was settled.
Cool, that's great.
Yeah.
So why do you live there? Is that where you've grown up, or you went, I like this area?
I was attracted to University of Pennsylvania.
Wow. And you're here this weekend to talk about the pitfalls of positive thinking. Would that be a good way to say it?
It's even better than that, the pseudoscience of positive psychology.
Wow.
There's no reason why we can't have a science of how to lead a better life, but I think it's become such a industry promoting self-help books and coaching. And it's promoted by undermining people's sense of that they're comfortable in themselves.
Well, now, I'll throw one at you. Drew Barrymore here. Now, Drew Barrymore says that every morning she imagines her day going perfectly and her being successful, and she creates her own reality by doing that. Would that be an example of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. And then it sets her up to be unhappy because it doesn't happen that way every day.
Yeah, well, the fact that she's Steven Spielberg's goddaughter would help a lot.
That probably helps.
So do you think we see successful people doing this and we go, oh, well, that's what I'm doing wrong, that's why I'm not like Drew Barrymore?
Absolutely. I think it comes from being successful, not from doing those silly exercises.
And so what should we be doing? Is there something where we think, okay, I'm going to do some positive thinking, and how should we skeptically look at it?
We should be prepared for the possibility it won't be a good day and deal with it.
Okay.
Realism, not optimism.
I was about to say neutral, but realism is very good. So do you think people could set themselves up for perhaps being even more depressed when things don't go the way they want?
Absolutely. I think you can make yourself absolutely miserable trying too hard to be happy.
Wow. So how do you find the happy medium? How do you find that reality? Because for some people that can be difficult.
I think just suspend expectations one way or the other and just deal with things as they come up, positive and negative.
And I've been asking a few skeptics at this weekend, if there was one woo that was actually real, if there was one sort of pseudoscience that was real, what would you like that one to be?
Think your cancer away.
Oh, right, because I'd forgotten, of course, positive thinking goes into that.
Absolutely.
So that must be terrible for people because they think, I've been doing the positive thinking, the cancer's not going away, it's my fault. You can get that?
Absolutely, yeah. Oh. And I think there's no evidence that attitude has anything to do with physical outcomes of cancer. And I think if people want to be angry and find no benefit or find cancer inconvenient, they should be free to do that. It won't affect their outcomes.
Well, okay. And what do you make of our skeptical movement here in Australia so far?
It's wonderful. I think it's a bunch of citizen scientists going out and challenging people with evidence. I'd love to see more of that.
And where can we find your website, read more about you?
Just look up Google Coin of the Realm, one word.
Wow, okay. Great. You have a great time here.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to try and think positively, but not too positively.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is Maynard. There's a newbie here.
Okay, if I chat to you from the Skeptic Zone?
Yeah, sure.
Well, everyone's rushing and hushing and pushing a bit of coffee over in the corner and trying to get to the bananas before they run out. But who have we got here?
Alana.
Your first time at a Skeptics event?
Yes, it is.
How did you get here? Did these suspicious friends with you drag you along, or how did you get here?
Yes, Cass is my tutor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she was telling me about the society, and she invited me along for the weekend.
Well, now, what particular area of skepticism interests you?
Well, we were talking about the anti-vaxxer movement mainly, and that's sort of what led us into there, because my mother is very against vaccinations.
Oh, so you must have great Christmas dinners.
Yeah, so it's very amusing to talk to her about, and Cass is giving me all the details on the background for it, to argue and create many fights with my mother.
Yes, I was going to say, yes, because your parents know the buttons to push when they're arguing with you, don't they?
All that emotive stuff, they bring in your childhood, and so she's just been giving me the facts so I can have a very solid argument against her and her crazy ways. So
now, what do you make of the people that come here? Now, there aren't many neckbeards. Normally, you'd expect more neckbeards than this, but
yes, there's a good collection of joggers and jeans. Yes. It's fantastic. I was also going to do joggers, but I was told I wasn't allowed.
No, you dressed up.
Yes, I dressed up. I thought I'd put my best foot forward for the first convention.
Now, we've only had the morning talk, so we've had stuff about Wikipedia, we've had stuff about diets. Is there anything you went, hey, yeah, that's right, yeah?
Oh, the diet stuff was hilarious, very well presented. I was trying not to hysterically laugh in the audience and break through.
And have you been sucked into a fad diet at any stage? Hang on, your friend's laughing. Has she?
Well, we were both privately schooled, and it comes with a lot of biases that get ingrained into you from an early age.
Crazy girls at lunches and what?
Definitely very familiar with lemon detox.
Yes. When formal's coming, you have to eat in a certain way, and it's very funny.
Right.
Yeah.
And everybody scribbles away their Ritalin to take extra amounts so they can thin down, that sort of stuff, eh?
Yes.
I know what goes on in the private.
You're onto us.
I'm onto it there. Yeah, so which diet did you think was the funniest one? There were some great fruit ones.
The full moon diet, definitely.
That's the werewolf diet for those people.
Werewolf, that's right, yeah.
It didn't actually say, it just said don't eat while there's a full moon, and then you eat other stuff at other cycles of the moon.
Yeah, it's very specific, bizarre.
Now, what did you find of the weird diets? Which one did you think was strange?
I mean, definitely, yes, the werewolf diet. I think the five bites diet in general, just
hilarious.
Since, exactly.
Vary so much with your mouth size.
Exactly. As he argued, I am also of Italian descent, and I can eat a lot in 5 mouthfuls.
Now, tell me, are the Southern Italians better looking than the Northern Italians? I thought it was that they're always arguing over that.
I think it's just more sun, you get tanner.
Oh, right, okay, so they're tan.
Yeah.
Right, okay, well, that's cool. Now, what are you looking forward to for the rest of the weekend here with the Skeptics?
Well, our tutor Cassandra's talk, we're looking forward to that. I think it's on marijuana, is it?
Marijuana, yeah, exactly. Wonderful.
Well, look, I hope this is the first of many Skeptic events for you. Have you been to many before, have you?
No, this is first time, but for both of us.
Wow, and what do you make of the crowd?
I think it's really interesting. It's a great mix of people.
Yeah. Look, and it is really great to see more women getting involved in the movement too.
Yes, definitely.
Well, thank you. We might have some future activists here.
Yes, definitely.
We hope so.
Thank you. And your names again?
Irina.
And Alana.
Great. Thank you. No. So we're here in the cooler section of the Garden Theatre just now, and I'm here with Eugenie Scott. Welcome to Australia yet again.
Thank you. Of course, whenever you're with the Australian skeptics, you are with the cool people.
Well, I'm glad we've got that worldwide reputation. Tell me, when did you become a skeptic? Was there a moment where you said, that's it, I'm down with this stuff?
Oh, man, that's a really hard question to
Or was it
answer.
a gradual process?
You know, maybe I'm getting old. I don't remember. I think certainly the first glimpse that I got that there actually was can you call the skeptics organized? That may not be the right, but there were actually a group of people who were concerned about crazy ideas that many people hold, was back when I got interested in creationism, which was as a graduate student. And then one of my professors says, well, here's this organization called the PsyCop, and they're looking at all kinds of things, including, and creationism was one of the things on their list as well. So I became aware that there was this whole universe out there of people who believed in things like astrology and so forth. And as it happens, I have quite a few members of my own family who are quite enthusiastic about various woo topics. So
this has come up a bit this weekend when I've been talking to new skeptics, old people, people from university, scientists. There's someone in the family, and what's the best way to handle that? Someone who's had a bit of experience in this field. Obviously, if you push too hard, you're going to have a very unfriendly Christmas dinner.
Well, I don't think you can. I mean, I can talk to your crazy relative, and maybe you can talk to my crazy relative, but I can't talk to my crazy relative because there are just too many other things. You've had a whole lifetime of relationships, good, bad, or indifferent, and to bring up something like empirical evidence and logical ways of looking at things, that's a completely different world than the kind of personal relationships you have with people. So I'm quite serious. It's like debating politics, and if you're really serious about politics, you might want to persuade somebody else's goofy brother-in-law rather than your own.
And what's been the biggest battle you've been fighting lately?
Well, I am retired now, so technically speaking, I don't have to fight the battles. My colleagues at the National Center for Science Education are doing quite well, trying to keep lids on the creationism and anti-climate change topics. I help where I can. I'm still volunteering at NCSC. I'm working in the archives. But I'm not as on the front lines anymore.
And have you started any arguments on the internet lately?
No, because I learned a long time ago that there are many more fruitful ways of spending my time.
And is creationism on the rise, more or less? And is the battle normally to be fought in Texas because of its power over the school book system in the U.S.?
Texas is part of a religiously conservative part of the country. It's also a very large state. It has a lot of students. It spends a lot of money on education. There are many reasons why eyes tend to be on creationism and other education issues in Texas. But it shouldn't be the importance of Texas should not be overstated. It's actually waned over the years because there have been changes in the Texas regulations governing public education. There have also been changes in the textbook industry as well. It used to be the case we would be extremely concerned about Texas because publishers would write for the very large Texas market and then everybody else would get their books. Now with modular publishing being so simple in the digital revolutions, et cetera, you can write a book that's got goofball science for Texas, and sorry about that for Texas students, that's not so great. But students in California don't have to have the crummy Texas book. And so the power of Texas to influence textbooks across the board has waned considerably.
With the power of religiosity, with people driven and felt they have to do something because of a higher power, does that make them a bit more zealots than scientists would be, because you're basically following the evidence where the people against you are following a higher power?
Well, I always used to joke that we had a much tougher row to hoe, those of us who support evolution, than those who support creationism in public schools, because Darwin did not die for anybody's sins. We do not have that kind of existential, if you will, power that goes along with salvation and many of these other religious beliefs. That said, I always also remind people that our best allies in keeping evolution in the schools, in the American public schools, is members of the mainstream clergy, because they don't want somebody else's religion taught in a science class. So you have to be careful that you don't look at the creation and evolution problem in the United States as strictly unidimensional. It isn't. It's much more complicated than that.
Wow. And what is something you see could arise a problem in the future?
Well, I'm waiting, as it were. I'm going to be giving a talk at the Skeptics conference about the Kitzmiller versus Stover intelligent design trial, which was held, now we're dating our broadcast here, 10 years ago this fall. It's amazing that so much time has passed. And, of course, traditional young Earth creationism is still around. Intelligent design is still around. The fact that we defeat these people in court means that that doesn't mean that they just go away and change their ideas. That means that they change their tactics. The good news so far is that we've been able to keep ahead, by and large, because the anti-evolutionist movement keeps making a lot of mistakes. The major mistake that they have made through the many, many decades is coming up with, quote, alternatives to evolution that all are too religious. But the strategy that's being used right now is much more clever than those earlier strategies, which were able to be defeated given our legal system, because you cannot advocate religion in the public schools. And we've been able to show that all of the various creationist or intelligent design efforts were attempts to get religion in the public schools. So we've succeeded there. But now the effort is much more subtle. It's sort of creationism by the back door. Rather than saying, well, let's teach evolution, but then balance it by teaching some kind of creationism or intelligent design, they're saying, well, teach evolution, but balance it by teaching the evidence against evolution. And, of course, there isn't any. The only place you find the so-called evidence against evolution is in the creationist literature. So it's a way of kind of slipping these ideas, although not, frank creationism. It's a way of trying to teach students that evolution is really weak science. They don't have to take it seriously, with the assumption, which is probably fairly correct in a country like the United States, that students will just automatically devolve, if you will, to the idea of creationism, because they look at this dichotomy. So it's either evolution or creationism. Well, if evolution isn't any good, then creationism must have happened. So it's a much more clever strategy in terms of the legal landscape in the United States.
And who's been the toughest opponent you've come up against in your career of fighting creationism?
Interestingly enough, I would say it was Henry Morris, the founder of the creation science movement, simply because he wrote so much. He built this movement up out of nothing, really. He worked decades producing this idea of flood geology and young Earth creationism.
So I imagine he has an answer for everything because he's experienced every question.
Henry Morris died in, I think, 2002, but he is still very, very highly respected. His books are still in print. He has a huge amount of influence among conservative Christians in the United States. So as the founder of the movement, he still is a force to be reckoned with, even though he personally is not on the scene anymore.
Right. But with so many different sects, like the Presbyterians and the Methodists and the Anglicans and the Catholics, they all believe in the same creationism myth?
Not a bit. Pretty much every single one of the groups that you mentioned accepts evolution because their theology is something called theistic evolution, which means, well, of course, evolution took place. Living things descended with modification from earlier forms. Humans share common ancestors with other animals, etc. But this was part of God's plan. What I've found is that most religious people, if you allow them to accommodate their religious views to science, they can do it. If you force people to make a dichotomous choice, if you act like a creationist, in other words, and force people to choose either between evolution or creation, in the United States, at least, where a very large percentage of the public are people who believe in God and who have some religious affiliation, people are going to say, well, if I have to choose, obviously what I'm going to choose is what gives my life meaning, is what ties me to a community of people, ties me to family, ties me to my beliefs that I feel are very important. Why would I accept this idea that I don't really understand very well anyway? By evolution, I'm going to remain a creationist.
And where does Islam sit with creationism? Because theirs would be very different again.
The basic story is very similar because in the three Middle Eastern monotheisms of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, you are still dealing with the basic Genesis story. Islam is fascinating because, unlike Catholicism, unlike Mormonism, unlike many Christian groups, Islam is very decentralized. There's no Pope equivalent or president equivalent like with the Mormons. There's no body that sets theology. Islam is sort of the original BYO theology. I mean, every little imam can kind of interpret the Quran as he wants, and as long as he can get a following, he's going to have a group of people who will, do what he says. So what you find is a great deal of variation within Islam. You find some better educated, really, Muslims who accept science and don't really have a problem, but they're really a minority. The majority of imams out there are holding to a fairly literal interpretation of the Quran, which, whenever you have a literal interpretation of your holy sects, you're going to have problems with science.
Yeah, and you, in saying that literal interpretation is wrong, that you've got problems there.
Yes, exactly, because you may be setting yourself up for a fatwa or some other kind of assault. And so...
has that been any sort of issue with the battle so far?
It has, not so much in the United States, more so in Great Britain, where you do have a fairly large and increasingly vocal Muslim minority. And what I'm hearing, and this is totally anecdotal, what I'm hearing from friends of mine who follow the education situation in Great Britain is that there are Muslim students who are causing problems in class, who don't want to be taught evolution. They're pushing back against the teachers. Interestingly enough, although obviously Darwin was their guy, right? There's not a problem in the United Kingdom with teachers or citizenry in general who rejects evolution. That doesn't mean that teachers really know enough about it to teach it well and to feel confident that they can answer some of the challenges that Muslim students may be directing against them. So what I'm hearing, and this is just anecdotal, and I would not want to place much faith in it without more actual data, but what I'm hearing is that unfortunately the situation in Great Britain is that many of the teachers are just sort of skipping evolution if they have a large group of, or at least an active group of Muslim students, because they just don't want to put up with the hassle, which is exactly the problem.
Understand that, yeah.
This is the problem we have in the United States as well. It's totally understandable, and the solution is fairly simple. The solution is to make sure those teachers know how to handle those kinds of questions and make sure that those teachers continue to teach good science, continue to teach evolution as a as a non-controversial scientific explanation.
Look, I'll ask a bit of a naive question here, in that the theory of evolution is certainly proven, but is there bits of it that could be even added to it to make it even more solid than it is already? Or is it such a done deal that you can't deny it at all?
I always like to help people understand that the way to think about evolution is a sort of a three-part explanation. The core idea of evolution, of biological evolution, of common ancestry of living things, of this branching and splitting tree of life, a genealogical relationship among all living things. That is undeniable. I mean, that is so well supported. We're not testing it anymore. It would be extraordinarily unusual if that were overthrown, because it just explains so much. So the core idea of common ancestry is here to stay. But we also have the pattern of evolution. How did that genealogical relationship take place? Who's related to whom? How closely? What does the tree of life really look at? There's lots of unanswered questions in that. And that is where the real growth in evolution is taking place.
There really is no missing link, is there?
No. But then the third component is the process or mechanisms of evolution. How does evolution take place? Not how does the tree of life look, but what are the forces that bring about this branching and splitting through time? And there are a lot of unanswered questions in that as well. Yeah. So that is where gaps in understanding, if you will, occur. They occur both in the pattern of evolution as well as the process of evolution. But the big idea of common ancestry, nobody's arguing about that within the world of science.
So we can't call in aliens to explain the Cambrian explosion?
Well, you can, but you're going to be waiting a long time for them to show up.
And the evidence is a bit thin on the ground, is it?
Yes, indeed.
Actually, why did everything happen bang at once then? Was it just all building up and it went pop? Why did that happen then?
You know, the Cambrian explosion is pretty misunderstood. For one thing, explosion is kind of a bad term to use. It's a term that's been around really for decades, but paleontologists nowadays don't actually think about it as something that takes place in a very rapid period of time. If it's an explosion, it's had a really long fuse, okay? It's at least 30 million years.
Right, okay.
A lot can happen in 30 million years, exactly. 30 million years is roughly the time that it took to get from a land mammal to a whale. Okay, so a lot of stuff can take place in 30 million years. On a geological scale, it was relatively quick, but certainly not an explosion in the way most people think of it. And really, why the Cambrian is so fascinating to paleontologists is really because some of the very basic body plans of living things were laid down. The difference between a mollusk, something like a clam, and an insect, something that's got 6 legs, or an arachnid, something with 8 legs. These basic body plans were laid down in the Cambrian. But then there's been a huge amount of development within those plans. I mean, the basic chordate body plan of 2 legs in front, 2 legs in back, and a spinal column kind of between them, and a head at one end and an anus at the other. That basic body plan has developed into the huge range of reptiles, birds, mammals, and amphibians that we see among the land vertebrates, and of course the huge radiation of fish as well. So all of that happened after the Cambrian. It's not like the Cambrian happened and all of a sudden you got lions, tigers, and bears. That's not how it happened.
Look, Eugenie Scott, it's been great talking to you. What's your favourite result of evolution? The platypus would have to be pretty good. That's pretty good. What have you got one that's really your favourite? Man, that's done well.
Oh, boy. It keeps changing. I'm a physical anthropologist by training, so of course I am fascinated with human evolution. And I really think that the transition from Homo erectus to modern humans is a fascinating period of human history. And I'm watching that transition and really enjoying learning about the new fossils that are being discovered that will kind of help bridge that gap. So,
how do you feel about any extrapolation into exobiology? Do you think that on another planet you would necessarily have to have a dominant species be whatever they are, like a human? Do things have to go that way?
They didn't have to go that way on planet Earth, but I think that Richard Dawkins is absolutely correct when he says that if we find life on another planet, we will find that the, if you will, governing mechanism is going to be natural selection. We may not find things with 6 appendages and 8 appendages and 4 appendages like we have here. We may not find things with appendages at all. We may find that it's not carbon-based even. We may find that there are other molecules that allow for the multiplication of structure and individuals. But we will find natural selection. And because we understand natural selection as a mechanism that brings about this branching and splitting process of evolutionary change, we will be able to understand life on other planets if we discover them.
Well, then, thank you for coming to Australia and hanging out with the cool kids.
I wouldn't miss it for the world. Thank you.
AstronomyCast takes a facts-based journey through the cosmos as it offers listeners weekly discussions on astronomical topics ranging from planets to cosmology. Hosted by Fraser Cain of Universe Today and myself, Dr. Pamela Gay of Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, this show brings the questions of an avid astronomy lover directly to an astronomer. Together, Fraser and I explore what is known and being discovered about the universe around us. Join us each week as we take a facts-based journey through the cosmos at astronomycast.com.
Well, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm visiting Melbourne, Victoria at the moment at the house of Dr. Steve Roberts. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Richard.
It's good to be here. Now, we've known each other for many years, and you are, of course, Australian Skeptics UFO expert. And the question is, how can you be an expert in something which is
unknown,
or probably not there? I mean, when we think of UFOs, most people will think of alien spacecraft, right?
Something unidentified. Yeah,
right. I know that's what it means, unidentified flying object. But in the popular imagination, UFO equals aliens coming to visit us and have a look.
Yeah. It's moved on from just something that's unidentified, like a blip on a radar screen, to have a sort of more definite form, like a flying saucer with
people with things in it,
beings inside it who've come to visit Earth, and or crash land because they drive badly.
You'd think that they would know how to control their spaceships better than that. Now, with me, I have brought, folks, I am looking at stacks and stacks of UFO books, which were given to another friend of ours, Martin Hadley, from another friend of his who was getting rid of them, I guess. 60 kilos worth of UFO books spanning years and years and years. First one we pick up, there's a book called Let's Hope They're Friendly. Here's one, The Day After Roswell. And we just go through UFOs. That's a great... Alien Encounters. There we go.
Yeah. Strange Customs, Forbidden Science.
Forbidden Science, with a picture of a pyramid on it.
Ancient Technologies to Free Energy.
The Face on Mars.
Well, that's a turn up for the books.
That's something, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Unexplained. What else have we got here? For Nobody's Eyes Only. Above Top Secret. UFOs Above the Law. Well, I imagine they would be above the law. In fact,
well, I know many of these books, and some are good. The Above Top Secret one is actually one of the better ones.
Oh, yeah?
From a more coherent researcher who's actually got his act together and is only slightly tainted with the obsession that there must be a conspiracy afoot.
Now, what it strikes me, Steve, as we look at all these books, now I don't know how many, 50, 60 books here, something like that, over probably. so many books on the topic, and they go, there's photographs and there's accounts and this is what, look, here we are, pictures of aliens. They look like, it looks like a praying mantis. Star maps.
That's a lot menacing.
They do. First of all, I guess one of the points we can make is no matter how many books there are on a subject like UFOs, and here we have a huge amount of books, it doesn't therefore equate to they must be here, does it?
Well, you can have lots and lots of books. It doesn't actually mean there's anything there. I mean, how many books are there about religion and the Bible?
And all other religions, yes, of course.
Yeah, how many books on that? And there's actually maybe nothing there. But yeah, people obviously see something, they think there's something going on, but when you track the evidence down, there isn't any, or it's too vague, but it looks like sometimes it's been interfered with, or you can make it look like that. So after a while you can say, look, the absence of evidence is actually evidence for a conspiracy going on. That, there must be evidence because people have seen there must be something happening. So if there's no evidence, somebody's hiding it all.
Alien encounters, true life stories of aliens, UFOs and other extraterrestrial phenomena.
True life, yeah.
True life.
I was minding my own business. And
there were this UFO
came up. Oh dear.
And UFOs and the national security state. It's just staggering to me that so many books can be written on something, and this is now 2015. They still haven't arrived. I mean, there's still no good evidence for them. Well, when I say them, I mean extraterrestrials visiting Earth.
Yeah, no, there's not. So there's a SETI program, of course, which is plausible that there might be radio signals, and we can send ours, and aliens can send theirs. We could hopefully pick them up. That's a plausible proposition. Likelihood is another discussion, but whether people have actually landed, that's an ancient one. Flying Saucer Occupants by Cole Lorenzen. This is from the 90 cents, the book.
90 cents?
Worth how old it was.
Yeah. Flying Saucers Here and Now.
Yeah, Frank Edwards.
How about that?
These are ancient books.
Yeah, so many books.
The reason I collected these are actually very old books.
UFO Report.
They come from the days before the Kreskin, that one got in there.
Amazing.
I met Kreskin.
You met Kreskin?
These come from the days before the conspiracy notion arose.
Right. Look, UFOs. What on earth is happening? The coming invasion.
The coming invasion.
Look out.
All right. Never came.
It never came. Did it? So yeah, again, it's just staggering. You'll never get through all these books.
There's 5 piles nearly a metre high each.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing how much books weigh. I thought just a few books, and you can stick them in your pocket when you came down here, but you had to get extra baggage on the aircraft.
Extra baggage just to haul all these
the aircraft flew in a sort of semicircle and it took off.
It was like a UFO when it took off too.
Yeah, the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah,
that's been investigated by proper scientists and done to death.
Yeah.
But,
well, I guess that we could think there are lots of books on things like Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster. There must be thousands of books written on these things. Again, gets to the point, no matter how many books there are with people saying they're here now and it's all a conspiracy. Oh, what's this?
Confirmation.
Whitley
Strieber. What's the first one? There's Communion?
Communion, yeah. The hard evidence.
The hard evidence, yeah, it's hard.
We open up this book and there are photographs of fuzzy things and clouds.
It's particularly hard as Whitley Strieber admitted he made it all up.
Fuzzy out of... Reminds me of the Goodies, that episode where they went looking for the Loch Ness Monster and they were sold a special photograph for taking fuzzy out of focus photos.
That's a related phenomenon. It's got the advantage that the Loch Ness Monster must be in Loch Ness, or it wouldn't be the Loch Ness Monster, it would be the somewhere else monster. So all you have to do is go and trawl Loch Ness, which unfortunately is about 2 kilometres deep.
It's huge, Loch Ness, yeah.
But it's huge. But in a way, it's limited compared to outer space. It's a much more limited phenomenon to look for. Light years. Gary Kinder. Oh, this one is. This is the. He's in with Billy Meyer. You can see this is the picture of a button hanging from a tree.
They're so bad. Those photographs.
No, it's about Billy Meyer.
Still hanging trees,
still hanging buttons from trees and photographing them.
Well, this one's interesting. In Search of Strange Phenomena, forward by Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy got himself a bit tangled up with this.
Didn't he?
With hosting it, not with actually doing it. But Leonard Nimoy's weird stuff, because obviously Mr. Spock is a weird character.
I used to like In Search of Leonard Nimoy. It was great. I've got a lot of them in my file, actually.
There's a better one now with William Shatner. Do you believe it or what?
Weird or What?
Yeah.
Yes.
That is a really ancient book. Flying Saucers, Serious Business.
Frank Edwards.
1952, that one.
Good heavens. 80 cents. There you go. It just, look, we're not even scratching the surface of how many books are here. The Mysteries of Atlantis, that's a mystery. Open Skies, Closed Minds.
This is not a bad one, actually. Again, by a pretty literate researcher, Nick Pope, who's got a better... The
Book of the Damned, Charles Fort.
Yeah.
Charles Fort, like the 40 Times.
That's quite a mammoth book, too.
But there's one book amongst them, Steve, which you found quite early when we were planning for
a very thin volume, only 84 pages, and it's about 8 millimetres thick, and I'm holding it upside down. 1957, $10. It's worth $10. There's more facts in this 84-page book than in the whole 5-metre-high pile put together. And it's The Nature of the Universe by Fred Hoyle.
How about that?
And
Pity it's not autographed.
In 84 pages, he's managed to describe the universe.
And there's probably no mention of UFOs there. Yes, good old Fred Hoyle. Oh, I've just dropped him. Oh, no. Oh, no. Sorry, Fred.
Yeah. Good old...
That book used to be worth a fortune.
Well, now it's slightly foxed, it's worth even more. Yeah, good old Fred Hoyle. He was the maverick of astronomers, but he was quite right in his thinking, but he...
well, more or less. He made a few errors.
He espoused a steady-state theory, which is quite plausible.
Yeah, well, at the time.
The evidence went the other way, but it was a good theory until the evidence came in. And he had a good worldview, and he summarised it all in this very neat little book, which...
we'll put on the top of the pile.
It's worth more than the 5 metres of...
The 5 metres. It gets bigger with every retelling of this. Anyway, for those of you who follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, the Skeptic Zone Facebook page, you would have seen some of these books in the little video teaser we put up for this week's episode. Anyway, Steve, happy reading.
Happy reading.
You're going to need to be on a UFO to read all these books, I think.
I think so, yeah. Perhaps I'll get abducted and I'll have time to read some books.
And for everybody else, well, keep watching the skies.
On Maynard.com.au.
Last Saturday night, Maynard went out on a binge. He got home at 4 o'clock in the morning, awfully intoxicated.
Well, it's not unusual for Maynard, is it?
It's Bunga Bunga with Tim Ferguson and Maynard. Bunga 20. Look out, you won't see that one coming. You're listening to the Planet Maynard podcast, and of course you can subscribe to Planet Maynard and get all the shows automatically to you through iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, all of those.
People, cling to your radios.
What do you think of kinesiology? That's where they press your arm up and down to figure out what's wrong with your pancreas.
Now, kinesiology, unlike any of the other modern natural therapies, deserves to be given just that extra little bit of scorn that the others don't get. I know homeopathy really cops it because it is and that Reiki is total but the kinesiology is wicked because it's not just it's that the does know is it just pays really well. So for kinesiology, you might as well ask your cat how to fix your back. So go to a doctor, you people.
And how is Kittler? Has Kittler got its MD yet?
Oh, yeah, he's an MD and a world leader. He's writing a new book.
I believe he's been doing Reiki by phone. The phone rings and you hear... What the... It's Kittler.
And it's just as effective.
Bongo Bongo. On Maynard.com.au.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and my goodness me, that cheesecake was pretty nice, and I think there's still some more left over in the fridge. Classic cheesecake, can't get better. Or chocolate cheesecake's quite good too, but normal cheesecakes, sorry, I seems to be going off on some sort of tangent here. Thank you, Dr. Steve Roberts and his wife Barbara for throwing such a wonderful party. Lots of skeptics were here the other night, and we all had a really great time, and lots of other friends as well. And wasn't that interesting to hear earlier on in the show the snippets from the Senate hearing? And maybe you'll get a better understanding of the antics of those wacky people at the broad anti-vaccination groups. And of course, thank you to Maynard for, again, a wonderful interview, wonderful series of interviews, particularly with Dr Eugenie Scott. Thank you to the people who have been buying pendants and earrings and things from Mr. Cat's Origami Jewellery, because that money does go to help the Skeptic Zone, and I hope you enjoy wearing that around or giving it as Christmas presents or whatever the case may be. Anyway, for this week, this is Richard Saunders, full of cheesecake, signing off from Melbourne, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.